Thanks for joining us for CBN News Today. I'm Heather Sells.
And I'm Mark Martin. The U.S. is looking into reports of a second American killed in Syria while fighting with the terrorist group ISIS. U.S. leaders already confirmed American Douglas MacArthur McCain was killed while fighting with militants. Scores of Americans are believed to be fighting for groups in Syria, raising serious concerns about the U.S. home front.
U.S. leaders say they're using every tool to convince U.S. citizens not to travel overseas to become jihadists. More than 100 Americans are believed to be fighting for ISIS and other militant groups in Syria. Their increasing strength is being compared to al-Qaeda leading up to the 9/11 attacks.
They may have again a place to organize a major attack on the United States, and that's very serious.
ISIS presents the greatest threat that we've seen since 9/11.
Overall, thousands of Westerners have joined the fighting in Iraq and Syria on the side of ISIS. House Homeland Security Chair Congressman Michael McCaul says keeping the fighting overseas through military pressure and political reform is crucial.
They are true jihadists, but they have greater access to Turkey, Western Europe. They have legal travel documents. Some of them have already traveled to the United States and back, one a suicide bomber. Intelligence officials and myself are very concerned about an imminent attack that could happen in the United States if we don't stop them overseas.
Earlier this summer, the Syrian al-Qaeda group said an American from Florida carried out a suicide bomb attack for them. He released this threatening video against the United States.
You think you are safe? You are not safe.
Please release my child.
Meanwhile, a desperate mother appeals to ISIS jihadists to free her kidnapped son, another American journalist, Steven Sotloff. President Obama authorized surveillance flights over Syria. U.S. officials say they need more information before launching airstrikes against ISIS headquarters there. The terrorist group has been gaining ground in Iraq and Syria, and now with the aid of American jihadists, the question is not if ISIS is a threat to the United States, but how great of a threat to the American home front.
The White House says the U.S. will not pay a ransom for hostages, but officials say they will exhaust every other option.
Russian-supported separatists have firmly gained control of a strategic town in Ukraine. Ukrainian officials are concerned the rebels are trying to use Novozovsk to create a land link between Russia and the Crimean Peninsula. The move would also give Russia control over the gas and mineral riches in the Sea of Azov. The State Department spokeswoman says Russia is being dishonest about its actions, even to its own people. She said these incursions indicate a Russian-directed counteroffensive is likely underway. Ukraine has already lost about half of its coastline.
The FBI and Secret Service are working together to investigate cyber attacks against several U.S. banks. Bloomberg.com reports Russian hackers attacked the U.S. financial system earlier this month. Some investigators believe the attack came as a retaliation against the U.S. sanctions against Russia.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says his country achieved a great military and political victory over Hamas in the latest round of fighting in the Gaza Strip. But the Egyptian ceasefire proposal that went into effect Tuesday is sparking concern. A report in the London Telegraph says more than half of Israel's cabinet members oppose the deal and are furious that the prime minister did not consult them on it. It also appears the majority of the Israeli public is skeptical. A new poll published in the left-leaning Haaretz newspaper shows that 54% of Israelis believe there was no clear winner after this summer's war.
While Hamas rockets were still landing inside Israel, a group of U.S. religious broadcasters paid a solidarity visit to the Holy Land. Billy Graham's daughter, Ann Graham Lotz, shared how important it is to stand with Israel for such a time as this.
I came at a time like this because it is a time like this to show that I stand by Israel. I believe she is God's special place, God's special people. He's put his name on this city. And I feel in the world there's a different perspective, and I believe it's just time for God's people to stand up with God's people. So I just want to be here to tell Israel that representing the evangelical world, that I love Israel and I'm going to be praying for her in a special way.
You can see our full coverage of the war in Israel at our webpage, cbnnews.com.
New research suggests many men who pay for sex with trafficked children get away with their crime. This disturbing study also found the average age is only 14 years old.
The numbers are staggering. An estimated 100,000 children trafficked each year in the U.S. So far, one of the best tools in fighting this tragedy has been shutting down the demand.
If we do not focus on the buyer, we have to sacrifice more of our children to this market of misery.
Now, new research shows that these buyers are getting away with their crimes. They somehow manage to avoid sex trafficking charges and the penalties that go with them.
There need to be explicit statutes that say this is a crime, and if you're prosecuted for this time, you will do the time.
Shared Hope and Arizona State University analyzed the arrests of more than 100 buyers. The results: 26% of those prosecuted served no time. 2/3 of the guilty enjoyed suspended sentences, and the average time served added up to just 18 months. Victim advocates say this weak attempt at justice won't deter buyers, and the public must understand the growing consequences facing child victims.
Very often, the individuals who buy sex from children are very violent in their sexual encounters with these children. So children will be marked for the rest of their lives by what is being done to them by the buyer.
The question now, what kind of action will the states take? This map and table shows which states have passed anti-demand laws and which states have laws to protect child victims from prosecution. Activists hope growing awareness and tougher laws will help stop the growing business of paying for sex with kids.
For more information on anti-trafficking laws in your state, we've got a link to Shared Hope's new website at cbnnews.com.
A federal judge in Utah has ruled in favor of polygamy. The U.S. district judge struck down parts of a law banning polygamy because he says it violates freedom of religion. The case revolves around a lawsuit filed by a polygamist family that appears on the TV show Sister Wives. Cody Brown and his 4 wives sued Utah 3 years ago after a county prosecutor threatened to charge them under the state's bigamy law. The Utah Attorney General says he will appeal the federal judge's decision.
The Obama administration is suing a Minnesota city for rejecting a proposed Islamic center. The St. Anthony City Council turned down a Muslim group's application to gather at the city business center in 2012. And now U.S. Attorney Andrew Lugar is filing suit against the city. The suit alleges that the council did not give the Muslim group's application the same consideration as non-religious permits, making it more difficult for members to practice their faith. The city says it did not discriminate.
It's been 16 months since the Boston Marathon bombing. 3 people died and more than 260 were injured. And as the victims continue their physical and emotional healing, stories of hope and love are still surfacing, like that of James Costello, who just this past weekend married the nurse who helped him recover. A photograph of Costello with his clothes ripped to shreds and parts of his body burned became one of the most recognized images of the 2013 attack. He met Krista D'Agostino while recovering from multiple surgeries for shrapnel injuries and serious burns. The couple married in Boston. Costello describes D'Agostino as his best friend and the love of his life. That's wonderful.
Coming up, they have survived genocide more than 70 times. So just who are the Yazidi people? We'll meet a Yazidi woman with family members who are still stuck in Iraq. Iraqi refugees inside the U.S. have formed a support group. It's called the Iraqi National Association, and its goal is to speak up for Iraqis being targeted by the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria.
The Yazidi people in that region have been persecuted for thousands of years. In fact, they've now faced attempted genocide 74 different times. I recently spoke with Shanaz Oso, a Yazidi woman whose family escaped persecution and made it to the United States. Now, when you hear about what's happening to your people in Iraq, what goes through your mind, Shanaz?
I just still think that it's all surreal. Like, I can't believe that my family over there is actually going through this until I hear all the stories. I mean, it's devastating. It's heartbreaking hearing what your family has to say when they call and let you know what they're going through. It's just, you feel helpless being so many miles away, just thinking if I was there, I could help them. But you have to do the best you can while you're here. So you do feel helpless, and even like small things like eating or throwing away food, you feel guilty for that just because, you know, they're starving over there. They're dying of thirst. They don't have a place to sleep. It's been really tough on all of us, even though we're 6,000 miles away.
Talk about your family. What has happened to them as a result of ISIS? I understand many of them have been victims of this attempted genocide. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. My mother's sister-in-law's family, before the genocide, there was 24 members in total. As of now, including her, there's only one other member of their family remaining. 22 of them have been killed. So out of 24, there's 2 left. And my family on my mother and my father's side have escaped to Syria, and they say that it's just not much better. We do get to Skype with them every once in a while when they do get electricity or internet, and we get to see it face to face. I mean, just see what they're going through. There's about 14 of them living in one bedroom. They don't have much water. They don't have much to eat. So they can never really say, I'm full, or it's better here. So it's not much better, even if you do get to escape to Syria or to other parts of the region.
All right, Shanaz Oso, thank you so much for your time today. And just remember that you're not alone. We're with you, and God is with you as well. We wish you the best.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Up next, 9 years after Katrina, New Orleans is back. But can the city's new $15 billion levee system survive the next big one?
The Obama administration is working to bring about a major international climate change agreement, but the president will be bypassing Congress, even though the Senate is supposed to ratify international treaties. The New York Times reports the White House is trying to forge the sweeping agreement that would force nations to cut their fossil fuel emissions, but the move is likely to anger Republicans in Congress who have been saying the president has been abusing his authority by avoiding Congress.
9 years ago today, Hurricane Katrina reached Category 5 strength in the Gulf of Mexico, and residents from Texas to Florida braced themselves for a direct hit.
We all remember the images of stranded people and entire regions underwater from that devastating storm. New Orleans bore the brunt, and as Jennifer Wishon shows us, it's fought its way back.
Monique Fauché loves teaching people how to swim. She offers private lessons at her home and teaches for free in the city to those who can't afford it. This is her inspiration.
Half of the bodies they found were from drowning because a lot of people did not know how to swim.
When Katrina flooded the city, Fauché, her sister, and parents lost everything.
As much as it took everything away, it gave me a whole new start.
And a new purpose.
The parents don't want their kids to drown, or they're just so afraid because so many people have drowned around them that they instill that fear. You're doing it! I think it's important for everybody here to swim. I mean, fishbowl.
No matter where you go, you're going to find water, whether it's the river right here, the massive Lake Pontchartrain to our north, the open waters of the Gulf to our south. We are surrounded by water.
When Katrina hit, Fauché says New Orleans was operating with a partial levee system at best. Improvements were on the books, but many left unfinished, awaiting federal funding. For the past 9 years, the Army Corps of Engineers has worked full-time fortifying the city. Levees and flood walls have been reinforced or added to the city's 133-mile perimeter, along with the 350-mile network of interior flood walls and levees.
Here's one of the remaining projects. It's one of 3 new storm surge barriers, complete with its own power source and super pumps designed to pull water out of the city into Lake Pontchartrain during a storm.
It'll fill an Olympic-sized swimming pool in about 4 seconds.
The work is 99% complete and expected to be finished by the end of 2016. So the big question after all this work and $14.5 billion tax dollars, is New Orleans storm ready?
The system would be challenged at a Katrina-type storm, but it would perform as designed. There may be some interior flooding. Again, it's a kind of speculation as to what might happen inside the system.
For tourists, the city is as good as new, maybe even better. The famous French Quarter is vibrant and once again a top travel destination. The New Orleans Saints Superdome, a shelter for refugees after the storm, restored as a crown jewel to the city's skyline. There are more hotel rooms and nearly 2 times the number of restaurants than before the storm. But look closer past the tourist hubs and scars are still very visible. Here in the lower 9th Ward, a community center tells the story. A makeshift map showing where residents retreated and an accounting of the many who never came back. Stephen Robinson estimates at least 50 people from his neighborhood stayed away. Their decayed houses all boarded up.
When we decided to come back here, it was just devastating for my wife and for me. We had just got through renovating our home, spent right at $100,000 renovation, and 4 months later, here come Katrina, wiped us out.
The overgrown lots, some barely mowed in nearly a decade, could soon be occupied again. State lawmakers passed a plan to let local residents buy abandoned lots for $100. It's now before Louisiana voters. Meanwhile, volunteers from across the globe still come to help people rebuild.
With some of the volunteers.
They're working on Robinson's father's house. Construction was delayed after he fell victim to contract fraud.
Things could have been done a lot differently.
Roads still need to be repaired. Restaurants and stores that once dotted the community, he says, never came back. Before the storm, 25 churches served the community. Now many are lifeless, left to the elements, abandoned by their congregations. Governor Bobby Jindal inherited Katrina's mess.
How confident are you, nearly a decade since Katrina hit New Orleans, that the city is prepared to weather the next storm?
The hurricane flood walls, the levees, the protection is better than it's been ever before. You can never build a wall that's going to keep out the water and the hurricanes forever.
Once the levees and flood walls are complete, the Army Corps of Engineers will focus on coastal restoration, another expensive project to prevent flooding.
Our people are resilient and they keep bouncing back after storm after storm.
People who returned consider each other family.
I love the city, I love everything about it, and I think the people here are so unique and great. It's always nice to clean out your closet and start again.
There's no place like New Orleans, for me. Now, other people, yeah. And I have a lot of friends say, why did I come back? And why, what do you see down there? There's nothing down there. Yes, it is. There's something down there. I'm down here. That makes the difference.
In Louisiana, some say hurricanes are the cost of living in paradise. Jennifer Wishon, CBN News, New Orleans.
Finally today, in the arid Chaco region of western Paraguay, indigenous tribes eke out a living raising livestock and cultivating small crops.
But the children in one of those communities are creating a better future for themselves and their families. Latin America correspondent Carolina Martinez has more.
Native people in this part of the Chaco had little access to education before 2001. Brazilian missionary Aurea Lobos has worked in Paraguay for 40 years.
It hurt me so much because I used to come here to the community center, and I noticed the indigenous people were being discriminated against. I was especially sad that they had no access to school.
That's what prompted the international Christian organization REACH, an acronym for Effective Aid to Children, to establish a school in Chaco, 200 miles from the capital, Asunción. Today, the school teaches 180 children, half of them boarding students. One serious problem they must overcome is the lack of water. The school has 5 16,000-gallon tanks, but that's not nearly enough when months go by without rain. So they have found that the best resource they have is prayer.
We had a prayer vigil once with all the kids, both boarders and day students. We did it with the whole community. By dawn, it was raining.
The Reach School not only helps children. 2 or 3 times a year, volunteer doctors and dentists, as well as nursing students, conduct site visits. For one day, the school becomes a hospital and pharmacy with free medicine for the whole community. One of the volunteers, soon to become a nurse, is a former Reach School student herself.
The only thing I can say is don't lose faith, and God will give you what you wish for. God answers prayer. I only asked him to give me a job, and he didn't just give me a job, but also the opportunity to study. He gave me more than what I asked for.
The children who come to this school often come from dysfunctional homes and are victims of domestic violence, sexual abuse, malnutrition, and lack of affection. In their community, the highest ambition for girls is to become pregnant at 14 and live as concubines. But at Reach, they find a new life and new values. They study the Word of God, which is not only transforming the children, but also their parents.
Change happens slowly, but every year we see how children mature. They're repeating the same things we told them. Girls say things like, "No, I'm not going to just live with a man. I'm going to study, finish college, have a career, and I will get married." They already have their mind set on something. They have goals for their lives.
It takes about $15,000 a month to maintain the Reach School, including the cost of food, education, and living expenses. Until 3 years ago, all those costs were covered by the Reach office in Spain. But because of the European economic crisis, they now only send $3,000 to $5,000 a month. The school could have to close its doors if it doesn't receive more financial support.
Education is the most important thing for our country to improve, especially if the children learn about God. So what I say to others is become child sponsors to give these children a chance to grow and have a future.
In Chaco, Paraguay, Carolina Martinez for CBN News.
And that's it for now on CBN News Today. You can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care most about at cbnnews.com.
And tell us what you think about the stories that you've seen here. You can do that on Facebook or at CBN News on Twitter. We hope you'll join us next time. Have a great day.